And before I tell you this story, I need you to understand something. What I am about to reveal is not mere superstition. I lived it, I felt it, and for decades, it haunted me. I was a witch, not the kind you see in movies or read about in fairy tales. My craft was real, dark, and powerful, and for years I was blind to the danger it posed, not only to myself, but to others. I grew up in a small town where the line between the spiritual and physical world was thinner than most people imagined. As a young girl, I was curious. I remember finding an old book hidden in my grandmother's attic. Its pages smelled of ash and herbs, and the symbols in it seemed alive. That curiosity led me down a path I could not escape for decades. I learned the ways of herbs, chants, and, most dangerously, colors. Yes, colors. The first lesson I learned as a witch was that colors carry energy. Some colors attract, others repel. Some invite light, others darkness. And I, in my arrogance, ignored all warnings. It wasn't until I began attending church that I realized the extent of the danger. I would sit in the pews, feeling the warmth of the congregation around me, and yet something felt wrong. The prayers felt hollow, the songs sounded distorted, and shadows seemed to flicker at the edge of my vision. I thought it was my imagination until I began noticing patterns. Certain colors people wore to church without a second thought, seemed to stir a dark presence. I remember seeing a woman wearing bright red. The moment she knelt in prayer, a shiver ran through the room, subtle but unmistakable. Shadows seemed to gather near her. I began observing more closely, almost obsessively. Through years of practice, experimentation, and, unfortunately, mistakes, I discovered 4 colors you should never wear to church. And I speak from experience, not theory. Red, the color of temptation, anger, and blood. It resonates with the energy of violence and passion, and when worn in a sacred space, it can attract entities that feed on unresolved emotions. Black. Many think it is protective, but in spiritual terms, black absorbs all energy, including holy energy. Wearing it can inadvertently create a bridge for dark forces. Purple. A color often associated with royalty or spirituality, but in my craft, I learned it can attract entities that thrive on pride and ego. Green, nature's color, yes, but also the color of envy and unbalanced growth in the spiritual realm. I saw disturbances in people wearing certain shades of green that were impossible to explain otherwise. I wish I could tell you I understood this from the beginning. I did not. The first time I felt true danger, I was 28. I had returned to the church of my childhood for a Sunday service. I wore a deep red dress, one I thought was beautiful and innocent. During communion, I suddenly felt a heaviness pressing down on my chest. I could hear whispers, not in my ears, but in my mind. I tried to focus on the priest's words, on the hymns, but the whispers grew louder. I left halfway through the service, trembling. That night, I dreamt of shadows in human forms circling me, their eyes glowing faintly. It took me years to piece it together. Each time I wore red, black, purple, or certain shades of green, I felt it. A tug, a pull, a presence that was hungry for attention. I remember vividly a woman I met in my 20s named Amelia. She was kind, devout, and wore a simple green dress to church one Sunday. By the end of the service, she confessed to me that she had felt an unexplainable heaviness, as if someone was trying to invade her thoughts. She didn't know it, but she had stumbled into the energy of a restless spirit. I was terrified, not for me, but for her. I had learned the hard way that this knowledge was dangerous, and it was my responsibility to protect others if I could. By the time I turned 40, I had abandoned many of my darker practices. I began attending church regularly, but I was cautious. I avoided the colors I had learned to fear. I started teaching others subtly, warning young women and men about the energy around certain colors, though I could not always explain why. Most dismissed it as superstition. I won't lie. The journey to leave witchcraft behind was painful. There were nights I felt the pull of old habits, the lure of forbidden power. I lost friends, opportunities, and at times, my faith wavered. But one thing I knew with absolute certainty: I could not risk the lives of innocent people to my curiosity or pride. Over the years, I documented my observations. I even experimented, carefully, seeing how spirits reacted when I wore different colors. It was scientific in a sense, but the results were terrifyingly real. Red and black always drew attention, purple occasionally, and green unpredictably. I learned that it was not just the color itself, but the combination with a person's energy, intent, and spiritual state. There was one chilling moment that still haunts me. I had a friend, Maria, a young mother, who loved wearing bright red during church. I warned her once, quietly, not to wear it again. She laughed, thinking it was superstition. That night, she dreamt of a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed, whispering her name. She woke up drenched in sweat, crying. I had seen it too many times not to take it seriously. I understand why people dismiss these warnings. I would have too if I hadn't lived it. But the truth is, colors carry more than aesthetic value. They carry energy. And energy, if unbalanced or aligned with dark forces, can open doors to spiritual danger. I don't write this to scare anyone. I write it because I want to prevent others from making the mistakes I did. Avoid wearing red, black, purple, and certain greens during worship. Pray in simplicity. Let your heart, not your attire, be your connection to the divine. There is a moment of clarity I want you to imagine. Sitting in a church, sunlight streaming through the stained glass, your hands folded in prayer. The air is warm, heavy with incense and whispered songs. You are safe, but unseen forces are watching. What you wear is not trivial. It can either shield you or make you vulnerable. I learned this truth the hard way. At 82, I am no longer a witch. I am a believer, a grandmother, and a storyteller. I share these secrets not because I am proud, but because I am terrified of what others might face if they ignore them. The darkness I once courted does not forgive ignorance. It waits for opportunity. Remember this: colors are more than colors. In a sacred space, they are vessels of unseen energy. Wear white, soft pastels, or earth tones during worship. They invite light, peace, and protection. Avoid red, black, purple, and green. unless you understand the unseen consequences. I wish I could erase the decades of mistakes, the whispers in the night, and the shadows that followed me, but I cannot. All I can do is share my knowledge, and now, you know. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. Spiritual danger is real, and sometimes it hides in the colors we choose. Be vigilant. Pray with your heart, not just your eyes. And remember, I learned this too late, but you don't have to.